ocean is calling us, and it has been for some time. Thank you so much for inviting me to provide some opening remarks to this really important session. As you've heard, JNCC is the UK's statutory advisor on nature, and our mission is to turn science into action for nature, people, and the planet. And I'm therefore delighted to be the focus of this morning's session is on evidence assessment into action. I want to start by moving from those wonderful sounds to an equally wonderful image. And I want to invite you to reflect on this very famous photograph. I'm sure many, if not all of you, have seen it. It's called Earthrise. And I like to believe, it's one of the first calls from the ocean to all of us. It's a remarkable image, both in the fact that it was unintended. It's the Apollo 8 mission to the moon in 1968, and it is the first color photograph of the Earth. And what does it show? It shows the color and the planet is blue. And as you will know, as her deepness Sylvia Earle says, no blue, no green. It's been described as the most influential environmental photograph ever taken. And I wanted us to take a moment just to reflect on this image. I find it, personally, really moving all these decades later. It really puts a lot of things into perspective. The theme of this conference is an inclusive future for our seas. And the ocean that surrounds us all is what connects us. It's part of our evolution, our history, our societies, our economies, our very ways of life. And it's in that context that I think it's really important to consider, and some of you have heard me go on about this many times, that there is one global ocean circulating this planet. It's shown in this image, Earthrise, and it's shown here. The hashtag Drop the S campaign has a way to go, but I think moving from oceans to ocean is a principled point more than a pedantic point. How we understand the global ocean, or fail to understand it, has a key part in influencing how we treat it. And the global ocean is the reason we are all here today. It is the reason for this session that it's so important to celebrate the regional seas conventions that we have, in particular OSPAR. The global ocean is home to an astonishing array, you would have seen yesterday and this morning, array of marine life, living in a variety of habitats connected to all of us through ecosystem services. And we all know, and I'm not going to rehearse all the arguments because many of you are very familiar with them, that the global ocean is absolutely essential to regulate the climate, to sequester carbon, provide us and all life with food and water, as we have so brilliantly just heard from Helen, essential in relation to water quality. It's essential for us for our energy and for growing marine industries, for a variety of raw materials, for coastal protection, for tourism, recreation, and I would argue equally importantly, inspiration. The ocean supports millions of jobs across the globe, and humanity has evolved with the ocean. We've been finding food and home and passage throughout the global ocean, creating myths and legends as we go through our seafaring days, and thriving coastal communities throughout the world. At JNCC, we work across land and sea, at home and abroad. And together with our partners, many of whom are in this room and many of whom are online, we've been seeking and analysing ocean signals for decades, whether involving this type of surveying, going to the seabed, using technology, taking this kind of imagery, and analysing that to inform our statutory advice to the four governments of the UK and the UK government, the overseas territories and crown dependencies, for example, on the creation of the network of marine protected areas. Also surveying various species, such as seabirds. We were very proud to produce, in partnership, the seabird count last year, and cetaceans as well as other species. Many of us have been working collaboratively and innovatively to understand better what the ocean is telling us. And as I often like to quote Maya Angelou, when we know better, we should do better. Our dependence on the ocean is a severe risk. It's providing us with all the data we need, and what we're seeing are symptoms of chronic illness becoming more and more acute. What's the ocean telling us? It's telling us I'm too hot, I'm too acidic, I'm suffocating, and I'm losing life. We know from the increases in sea surface temperatures and the increase in heat waves, with documentation of the highest, most extreme heat wave in UK waters last year, and please do see excellent analysis by CFAS colleagues on that, that this is a significant and growing problem, and you see the evidence of it here, and the consequence in terms of coral bleaching, devastating some of the most important marine habitats across the globe. Combined with global oceanic oxygen content declining, so the ocean is becoming deoxygenated as well as warmer. And if that wasn't enough insult, to add injury, increases in carbon dioxide, causing acidification. Some areas of the sea are becoming so corrosive, it is literally preventing the formation of marine life or affecting the formation of that marine life. We also know that overexploitation of marine species has led to extinction, it is leading to extinction, and it is creating the risk of extinction. Now, this evidence is really uncontested. We have marine industries continuing with oil and gas exploration and accelerating expansion of renewables, absolutely essential for achieving net zero. But the question here is, how do we go low carbon whilst also maintaining high nature? And if these pressures, these cumulative pressures, are not enough, then there are new and emerging pressures on the global ocean, such as deep sea mining and also avian influenza, decimating populations of seabirds that are already in decline. Here we see some examples of species that have been affected by this plethora of accumulative pressures, whether that's the spiny lobster, basking shark, black-legged kittiwake, and the northern Atlantic cod. So at this point, I know it's a bit doom and gloom, but at this point, I invite you to really reflect and think on what the ocean is calling us all to do, here in this room, online, and beyond. And I want us to bring back to mind that pioneering image of our beautiful blue planet. And let us reflect how our species, this naked ape, has changed the chemistry of the global ocean. That has happened on our watch. The latest assessment of the OSPAR QSR points to declining biodiversity and continued habitat degradation. And the loss of that biodiversity is weakening the resilience of the ocean, its ability to withstand these pressures, its ability to adapt and mitigate towards climate breakdown and provide critical services to humanity. And whilst we have made significant progress, and we must absolutely celebrate that, I completely agree with Helen. We've developed, for example, a network of marine protected areas across the UK over the last decade, and we've done that collaboratively. We all know there's much more to do to ensure the appropriate management of those areas and the wider ocean, given the range, scale, and pace of these cumulative pressures. Only 14% of the protected features are in what we would consider favourable condition. Now to the hope bit, so you can exhale now. But as a species, And this is what I find remarkable. It's why I mentioned the point that we had the power to change the chemistry of the ocean, if you really think about what that's meant. As a species, we've had the ingenuity, the creativity, the desire, the capability, and the short-term need to extract, to exploit, to pollute, but for economic and social benefit. We had the power to cause the problem, and I invite you to consider, with your hearts and your minds open to the call of the ocean, that we also have the power to solve the problem. I've talked about the importance of collaboration and innovation, but I want to end with a call for inclusion. But inclusion over geographical space and intergenerational time. You will have heard yesterday, and you will continue to hear today, about the importance of local action for global outcomes. And multilateralism, for all its weaknesses, its faults, is the best global route we have. And we absolutely should celebrate the success that the UK had, this ocean nation had, in Montreal at CBD COP15, year before last now. The creation of the global biodiversity framework is the Paris moment for nature, and the responsibility is with all of us to implement that. We also need to work across the 4 countries of the UK with our various stakeholders, some of whom are in the room, to make sure that we're taking that whole of society approach, involving all communities, which you would have heard so compellingly yesterday. But we need to think intergenerationally, understand that it's short-termism which led to and continues to lead to ecological collapse and climate breakdown. I'm arguing that the fundamental thing we need to do is to strengthen our capacity for long-termism, to be good ancestors. And to deliver that, we need to answer a few questions. The first is, do we, this community, have enough hope for future generations? Helen talked about optimism, and I'm here to talk to you about hope. Are we telling the same story, or are we imagining the possibility of a different future? At JNCC, we strongly believe that hope is a leadership skill and one we must embrace. Why is it so important? Because it incentivizes action. It's essential to avoiding the mistakes of the past. We have, in effect, as we colonize the past, we are colonizing the ocean. We will colonize the future. We need to act intergenerationally in the long term to decolonize that future. We also have to ask ourselves, have we had enough courage? Have we had enough self-reflection on our role of this community and our responsibility with humility and learning? Have we communicated the evidence in the right way? Have we framed the discussion? Have we communicated in a way that people understand, and have we checked that understanding? You've heard yesterday about who's in this room, who's online, but importantly, who's not in this room. Who are we including and excluding, intentionally or otherwise? And importantly, for those people we're excluding, are they in other rooms right now making decisions that mean that we will be at this conference for years to come telling the same story? Are we willing to take more risk? I'm here to ask you, each of you, what would that look like for you individually? What would it feel like for you and your organizations? Is your level of risk appetite commensurate with the scale of the risk presented by the pace and scale of ecological collapse? Now, I don't have the immediate answers to those questions. The scientific assessment that we're about to hear from our excellent panel will show us the way in terms of ocean health. But if we're really listening to that call from the ocean, and we grasp the full implications of what the data is saying, if we're able to move, as JNCC wants to, from monitoring ecological collapse to enabling ecological recovery, we will all need to embrace a very simple idea, that action requires agency, that agency requires hope and courage, and that we all have a role in engaging hearts and minds and hands in ensuring global ocean action. Thank you very much.